friend, thank you so much for your kind participation in today's Swadhyasa Chakra Weekly Forum Dialogue. Um, it gives me a great sense of honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Nishikant Kolgeji, who is a deep seeker. He is a Gandhian, and at the same time, he has deep quest of Ambedkar's movement, Ambedkar's struggle, and Ambedkar's quest for empowerment. I extend a very warm welcome to Professor Ananta Kumar Giri from Madras Development Institute, Chennai, and honorary trustee of Vismedan Center for Asian Blossoming. I extend a very warm welcome to Miniti Pradhanji, Professor Mohanty, and all friends, all viewers, both on Facebook platform and YouTube platform. Today, we are going to nurture this program in order to understand Ambedkar's quest of justice, freedom, equality. The topic of today's discussion is walking and mediating with the sadhana and struggles of Babasaheb B.R. Ambedkar, cultivating alternative planetary futures. Let me give a brief introduction to our Swadhyasa Chakra Circle, which is a part of Vismedan Center for Asian Blossoming. We invite people from different fields of life to share their knowledge, understanding, and praxis to make this world more livable place. And also, we invite seekers to have collaborations with us, academic collaborations. To initiate today's talk, I would like to invite Professor Ananta Giri to initiate the discussion. Ananta, over to you.
Namaskar. So, good afternoon and happy birthday with Babasaheb Ambedkar, happy Sankranti, and this kind of turning of the season and the birthday of Ambedkar. It invites us to continue our sadhana and struggle with Ambedkar and to realize Dr. Ambedkar, Babasaheb Ambedkar, as not just an icon and not just a name and a very important name, very important contributor to modern India, but as a living sadhana and struggle. Because what happens with anybody, there comes a process of iconization. There comes a moment where we make a statue of a living legacy. Unfortunately, Baba Saheb is still in that process of statue making, and many of us are too engaged in just showing how great Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar is. He's certainly great. But what we are invited on his birthday, what is the point in repeating so many times all the great adjectives and glorifications? But all this is not a substitute for walking and meditating, joining Baba Saheb Ambedkar in his sadhana and struggle. And I would like to bring the word sadhana here. What is sadhana? A continued effort. What is tapasya? A continued effort for a higher cause, for embodiment of a different way of living in self-culture society in the world. It is in this sense, Baba Saheb's life, his birth, his journey, and we all remember the journey in his life. For example, that very deeply heart-touching essay, right from Baba Saheb's biography, when he is waiting at the railway station in Goregaon, waiting in the train station. And towards the end, he is saying that he has a ticket and he is well dressed. He has the food with him, but with everything, he's still lying hungry. He's spending the night hungry, even if he has food with him. So that is the sadhana. This is the struggle. Then when he comes to Columbia University, he studies. And as you know, he takes classes with the great philosopher John Dewey. And these days that there is some work on the influence of John Dewey, his pragmatic philosophy on Ambedkar. And in his Annihilation of Caste, Ambedkar is referring to John Dewey's work. As he's referring to many important thinkers' work, he's referring to Plato, he's referring to Manu Sanghita, and he's also referring to Upanishads. And he's writing that the principles of liberty, fraternity, and equality, all this need not come only from the sources like French Revolution. If we go deeper, we can also find some of these sources in the Upanishads. Then Ambedkar goes on to say, for this, we would have to totally rethink the religious infrastructure. Because this idea that each one of us are equal, we do not have a caste. In his Riddles of Hinduism, Ambedkar is saying that this whole idea that we are all, we carry the spark of Brahma, Brahmoism he calls, Brahmaism, What a great egalitarian idea it is. But then we would have to ask what happened that this society with such a profound sense of equality, it really treats human beings like this in such, indignified, in such annihilating way. And Ambedkar goes on to challenge us that the problem with caste system is not just a division of people into four varna and then subsequently to many. Building on Plato, he's saying that as Plato was trying to divide people into three categories of people. Now, this Chaturvanya, these four category, the fundamental difficulty is not that there is Brahmin on the top and Sudra on the bottom. He said the fundamental difficulty is that we cannot pigeonhole human beings into a whole, like you are Brahmin, I am Sudra. So therefore, this fundamental challenge that Ambedkar is posing, and this is cannot be met only by an identity politics where opposing Brahmanism, we are creating Dalit politics around an essential category of Dalit. Of course, we would acknowledge that some Dalit scholars, like Suraj Yangde, when he's talking about Dalit love, that Dalit love is not essentializing Dalit as an identitarian category. What he's challenging us to realize, Dalit love is that unbound love which has the capacity to embrace both the Brahmins and the Dalit. The point is this kind of transgressing challenge that Ambedkar is posing, that it requires attention for each one of us. Then his numerous struggles. Again, for example, he coming back to India and he initiating the satyagraha for water, and then his, the politics of the scheduled caste, the labor, and then he joining the cabinet, and then his, difference with Pandit Nehru on Hindu Code Bill, and then his embracing Buddhism. So the Buddha and his Dhamma. So it is an invitation for us to understand Ambedkar from his life in 1891 to 1956 to through some turning point like his study at Columbia and his learning with John Dewey. And in Columbia also he wrote an essay on caste, 1916. And after 40 years, he embraces Buddhism. But in his book, Buddha and his Dhamma, now how do we understand the constitutional journey of Ambedkar with Buddha and his Dhamma? For example, the question to ask is that what kind of, for example, Buddhist ideas are entailed or suggested in the constitution, or how the constitution would have been if it were much more kind of flown with some of the spiritual ideals of Buddhism, as some of the spiritual ideals of Upanishads and other liberatory traditions. Now, Dr. Akash Singh Rathore, in his book on the secret life of Indian Constitution, and he says that how Ambedkar, he played a very important role in introducing fraternity to Indian Constitution. So that fraternity now can be read together with the idea of Maitri from Buddhism. And Maitri, fraternity, Sri Aurobindo also emphasizes on fraternity. And Gandhi also. So Gandhi, Sri Aurobindo, Buddha, Ambedkar. But this fraternity is not just fraternity understood in a narrow sense like brotherhood. This fraternity is really a sense of relationship, a sense of care in which both women, men, and children are engaged. Sisterhood, for example, sisterhood, fraternity, friendship, and Maitri. So Maitri itself in Sanskrit, now the name of a woman is also a Maitri, and Maitri also means friendship. Therefore, the sadhana and struggle of joining Ambedkar in his continued sadhana and struggle, we are invited to join with some of these unfinished agenda of emancipation, as it is cast today, the anti-caste movement. Now, how do we move from anti-caste movement, from anti-Brahminical to anti-caste annihilation of caste, as really creating a societal life in which it is, if the Brahmanism is the problem, then Dalitism is not an unreflective Dalitism is not the solution. What Ambedkar is challenging us that any kind of pigeonholing is limiting. So how do we create an emancipatory politics? And Ambedkar himself, he studied some of the texts of Hinduism, and he also had a bit of knowledge of Sanskrit. He wanted to read Sanskrit more. But how many of contemporary Indian intellectuals who utter the name of Ambedkar, and how many of us we are able to really go deeper into the multiple layers of texts and traditions of India and offer a critique of hierarchy, offer a critique of caste domination, offer a critique of gender domination, but also in dialogue with some of the emancipatory streams. For example, Tantra. In Riddles of Hinduism, Ambedkar has reference to Tantra also, Now, Tantra is a way of living which has not accepted the hierarchy of caste and gender. At the same time, Tantra gives importance to the feminine power. So therefore, some feminist scholars today, they are trying to read Ambedkar in terms of not only his contribution to annihilation of caste, but his also pointer to the need for annihilation of gender domination. So today, caste, class, gender, but also the new kind of challenges. A few critical thoughts also we would have to embrace. One is that, like all of us, Babasaheb was born in a historical juncture, and the challenges of both caste oppression and colonialism. And for example, if we would like to read, work, and meditate with Babasaheb, with the continued challenge of the onto-decolonial transformation, like if we would like to also embrace not only caste as the problem, but colonialism as the problem, then how we would have to work and meditate with Babasaheb today, and how we would have to bring the onto decolonial critique of colonialism also. Therefore, the historical challenge is that sometimes Babasaheb collaborated with the British colonial power, and during the interim government, all these are part of the historical life of us. So without being judgmental about it, today how our journey with Ambedkar also cultivates a critique of the colonial mode, and therefore how there can be dialogue between Ambedkar's critique of caste, Ambedkar's critique of gender, but also we would have to bring the critique of colonialism. But that critique of colonialism is not just an externalist critique, and this is what Sabelo, not Getsane from Africa, who is currently based in Germany, he talks about the onto-decolonial critique. To this, I add the challenge of onto-decolonial critique and transformation. Then another question is approach to state. Now, both Pandit Nehru and Babasaheb Ambedkar, they were much more kind of, they were they were not so critical about the dangers of state. So understandably, Ambedkar posited a lot of, he posited a lot of significance in state power in transforming society. But he himself also challenges us that political revolution has to be accompanied by social revolution. His famous idea that today we have democracy in name, but that democracy has to be translated into substantive social democracy, and that requires social revolution. For this, state power is not the most important factor. We also today we realize limits of state also, and during the same time, like Gandhi himself was aware of the dangers of the power of the state, and today we realize that how state power is also a very important factor of annihilation of life, including annihilation of life in the Dalit communities. So how do we today cultivate a critique of state, and how we work and meditate and join the living sadhana and struggle of Ambedkar by bringing a critique of state? Then how we would have to reconstitute our political life, not simply with the primacy of the state, but state, communities, also self, in the sense of Ambedkar, a self which cannot be pigeonholed into anything. And then the question of modernity. And of course, the whole question of tradition, modernity, and after Babasaheb, we also have been confronted with the challenge of the postmodern critique of modernity. Therefore, Ambedkar's modernity, and today, how do we work and meditate with Ambedkar vis-a-vis some of the fundamental crises of modernity, including what can be called as darkness of modernity, the dark, not only side of modernity, at the heart of darkness, the darkness that is at the heart of modernity. So therefore, in terms of enlightenment, that how do we transform the modernity in such a way that we are able to move ahead with the emancipatory ways from modernity. At the same time, we transform modernity. And this is a challenge of working and meditating with Babasaheb today, and a kind of way of thinking about self, society, and the world without just being a prisoner of the logic of modernity. So, and another question is also the question of the whole, the hand and head. With the kind of intellectual revolution, Babasaheb says that we would have to educate, agitate, and that education, is it only education with the book? Babasaheb has a book in his hand, that is Constitution of India. But for example, and with respect to Babasaheb, that how our hand, on one hand we have book, and another hand we also have a plow. so that we are plowing our land. The whole question of intellectual and manual labor, and the very fact that our Dalit brothers and sisters, they have been kind of condemned into manual labor, that does not take us, that does not free us from the challenge of crafting a way of living, which has to continuously find ways of a transformative relationship between mental and manual labor. So these are some of my, offering in terms of, walking and meditating, and also joining Babasaheb Ambedkar in his living sadhana and struggle. And as we remember, we realize his birthday today is also our birthday in terms of giving birth to this reality and possibility of sadhana and struggle in our life, and not just limiting ourselves to building statues of Ambedkar or using Ambedkar as just an instrument to settle our many scores. Thank you for your kind considerations. I invite so Professor Nishant Kogle to please share your thought. I think Ranveer is just around. So Professor Kogle, please.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Professor Giri. It's really a great honor to share stage or whatever screen with you, and for your invitation. But it was very short period, so I could not prepare much about it. But definitely, I'm going to speak on the second part of our today's topic, cultivating alternative planetary futures. That is also a part of today's talk. But before I come to on this issue, I would like to add few things about what Professor Anantagiri has said. He is a teacher to me. Like I learn many books and articles, and I'm still learning from him. But I want to add two things especially. This sadhana and struggle is not the sadhana and struggle of Ambedkar alone. There is a long tradition of such sadhana and struggle, starting from Christ, Buddha, Kabir, Phule, and Ambedkar. So there is a whole tradition who has gone through this sadhana and struggle to emancipate the downtrodden community. And it is also not sadhana alone of Ambedkar. It is also a sadhana of his father. His father was very much keen that he should study and he should acquire knowledge and serve his society. It is sadhana of Ambedkar wife also who supported him on every mission of his life, and she suffered poverty, and she also spent many days and night without food. It is also a joint struggle, meditation, and sadhana, because they also lost their four kids. So these all things, and Ambedkar was not alone. There were his co-worker also, and there were inspiration like Sahu Maharaj of Kolhapur, and also Maharaj of Gaikwad Maharaj of Baroda, who supported him for the scholarship, and they also struggle against the domination of Brahmins in their princely state. So it is a sadhana and struggle of millions of people, in the way that that Ambedkar represent the struggle and sadhana of millions of people who for many centuries have been deprived the basic rights, like even using the common water sources, or walking on the roads and other things. So this is what I wanted to add just to Professor Giri's like a footnote to his lecture, that it is actually collective sadhana and struggle. I would also like to add another footnote to Professor Giri's talk, that he very clearly says that we need to pay attention to Ambedkar's struggle to the caste annihilation, and some feminists also did good job of adding to Ambedkar's view on how the gender division or gender exploitation or patriarchy can be attacked or dismantled. But he also suggested that we should also keep in mind or enrich this Ambedkar sadhana and meditation via including the critique of colonialism, critique of state, and critique of modernity. So I would also like to add that we should also come up with this idea that the colonial encounter in India was between just two groups, that there were British exploiter and or Indian who were exploited. It was not such a clear-cut division. The British could not rule without the help of some of the prominent caste group of India, and there were some also Britishers and European who also helped in the political struggle of India's independence, India's political independence. So we also we need to bring not only the critique of state, colonialism and modernity, but also to how to look at these concepts, that colonialism was and colonial encounter was not between the two groups. In the same way, Ambedkar was also uh, was aware of the fact that he accepted state as a contingent reality. He did not believe that the state will bring the emancipation to the Dalit community, because obviously he shifted toward the end of his life to the religion for this hope, and converted to the Buddhism. So this is also things we need to keep. Even for his modernity, we need to rethink about how he understand modernity, and or why he also wanted to go back to the religion to bring to build up an emancipatory project, his emancipatory project for the Dalit. So this is the, I think these were the two small footnote. And now I will talk about the second part of the today's topic, cultivating alternative planetary futures. So what I'm going to do in a few minutes, that I'm reading actually Ambedkar essay, Buddha and or Karl Marx, said that according how he presented, Marx has presented a future possibility of future according to Ambedkar, and how Buddha also presented the same thing, and where they both meet and where they depart. I will bring Gandhi also in it, because I largely work on the Gandhi for that reason, that how we can fit Gandhi also in this discourse. It's what kind of alternative future they were investing that we can have. So summarizing uh, the Marx philosophy, um, Ambedkar says that there are four essential elements of Marx philosophy. First, he says, it's very well known that Marx believed that the function of philosophy is to reconstruct the world and not waste its time in explaining the origin of the world. So he said this is the first premise or first principle of Marxism, and he says that so Buddha also agree with him, and he gives some stories also. And we also know Buddha says that if an arrow is stuck in someone's body, we should not thinking about from where the arrow has come. In place of that, we should try to first remove that arrow from a human body. So in this way, Ambedkar tried to say, for Buddha also, philosophy or reason is basically for reconstructing the world. It is not for wasting time, how it came into the existence and what is the purpose of these and that, but they primarily, Buddha and Marx both avoided metaphysical questions, who is God, soul, and all that things. So he said there is Buddha and Marx agree. Then second point, he said Marx believed that there is a conflict of interest between class and class. Ambedkar believed that Buddha also believed that there are the different classes and different class, and there is a conflict between these class. There is a continuous struggles between different class, caste and class. He gave the Ambedkar give the example of during Buddha's time there were many kingdoms. They were also continuous in war against each other and all that stuff. So he believed that, like Marx, Buddha. This is Ambedkar's reading. This is the that Buddha also believed there is a continuous conflict and struggle between different class and caste. Sorry, I forget to tell about the Gandhi. So this is Gandhi, my reading. Gandhi will also be like Marx and Buddha will agree that we should not waste our time in pondering, discussing about metaphysical question about the world, existence of world, meaning of the world, but we should try to remove sorrows and problems and exploitation from the community. But I think Gandhi partly will agree that there is a inherent conflict and between the different class and caste. But Ambedkar believed that Buddha agreed believed that there is a class and caste conflict present in the society. Third thing Ambedkar says that the private ownership of property bring power to one class and sorrow to other through exploitation. Ambedkar believed this is the third principle of Marxism, that actually private property brings sorrow to one class and power to another class. And his reading also says that Buddha also believed, and he he gives several examples of Buddha's discussion with his disciple, where he said he did not Ambedkar also tell us he did not believe that use the word private ownership, but he will possession, that if you have uh, any kind of ownership and possession you have, that actually bring power to one class and sorrow to the another class. He also said that therefore Buddhist monks were not allowed to have any kind of private property. They were allowed only to use 3-6 articles like needle, bowl, and dresses only. They can have possession or ownership of these classes. So he believed that that for Buddha also this is the case. Who believe that any kind of position, any kind of ownership, the idea of owner, that this is my property actually, or this is I own these things actually, bring sorrow in the society. And fourth, Ambedkar believed that for Marx, that is necessary for a good of society that sorrow be removed by abolition of private property. So, according to Ambedkar reading, Buddha also believed that any kind of possession, any kind of ownership actually bring sorrow and exploitation in the society. And we should. This is Ambedkar reading, that we should for Buddha also this social message was important, and he also therefore for at least he suggested we need to look at the life of sanghas, Buddha Bhikshu Sanghas. So they have no ownership of any means Buddha Sangha was as an ideal form of organizing society where there is no ownership. There is to any individual. They all things belong to collectively to everyone. Ambedkar narrate one story also when Buddha's mother joined Sangha. She need one stall for Buddha, and she gifted to that dress to the Buddha, and Buddha actually denied while saying that and no individual can receive gift. A gift should be for the sangha, not for the any individual ones. And he gives several other examples to say that actually Buddha might partly agree with Karl Marx that ownership of private property need to be abolished for good of the society. Gandhi, I believe, would also not completely agree with this reading of Marx, or this principle of Marxism, that the private property need to be abolished for the good of the society, because Gandhi had a different idea of trusteeship, which allow the people have private property, but they should treat private property as a not as a trustee of that property. They should act as they are trustee of the those private property, and should be used for the larger benefit of the community. So this is what Ambedkar actually summarized Marxist philosophy and his similarity with Buddha. But Buddha may not use the word like exploitation, sorrow. He will use word sorrow, misery, and other things. So now, Buddha, what is the means to achieve this? To remove this sorrow or misery from the society. For Buddha, actually, he presented a noble eightfold path, and means you should have a balanced mind, balanced spirit. You should not tell lie and hunt. You should not cause or hurt to any living being. And this Buddha has given the eight points, eightfold point for achieving these means, for removing the sorrow from the societies. It is clear that the means adopted by the Buddha were to convert a man by changing his moral disposition to follow the path of voluntary. What Buddha was aiming at is closer to what Gandhi was aiming, to change the moral disposition of the individual, and that is also not by forcefully, but by following the path of voluntary. So you should continuously engage with the others and try to bring change in his moral ideas, and that is also that change should also be come through voluntary. It should not be imposed. But we know Gandhi would also agree in this respect to the Buddha. But Ambedkar reading of Marx says that Marx adopted two methods. One is violence, and second is dictatorship of the proletariat. So he said these are the two means by which the Marxists want to establish communalism. The first one is violence, and they believe nothing short of it will sufficient to break the exploitative system, existing exploitative system, and abolish the class differences. And second is the dictatorship of proletariat. And he said nothing short of it will suffice to continue or build a new system. So both things, according to Ambedkar, is necessary for Marxist philosophy, that you have to use the violence. There is no other alternative ways, and you have to use the dictatorship of the proletariat to retain what good to build a new social political system. So here Ambedkar says, so the difference lies between both Buddha and Marxists about their means, and they both were agreement that we need to remove the sorrow, we need to remove the misery, we need to remove the exploitation from the society. They both agree. Even Gandhi will also agree with this point, but their means is different. Where Marxists emphasize on violence and dictatorship, Buddha was actually bringing the change in the moral disposition of the people. So this is, and I think Gandhi would also agree with Buddha in this case, that as I have already mentioned about it. So, but there is also Ambedkar talk about bringing the John Dewey, that you can't, the little force is required. He said the Buddha's non-violence is not the non-violence of Mahavir Jain, that you have to completely come in each and every situation, you have to avoid violence or condemn violence. He said there are the conditions where you can use violence. He said, suppose there is a need to punish any criminal, so that in that case you have to use the violence. There is also need to protect the innocent people, then in that case also you need to use the violence. So Ambedkar also says, if in these two conditions violence can be used, so definitely Buddha will also allow, if someone possesses property more than is required, can be used. But he make a difference between create violence as a force as a violence, or force as a energy. So he make a difference, slight vague difference. It's not, but he is making, there is a scope for righteous force, for using the force if your cause is correct. And he also bring the discussion of whether means justify ends or not. He said Buddha will agree, and he again bring to John Dewey, and he said that Buddha will agree that if not end, what will justify the means. So he believed that if you are sure about that you are on the right path and other is wrong path, and there is no other alternative ways available, so you can use a force creatively. Definitely Gandhi would not agree with this point. For Gandhi, means Gandhi, I would say, the partly will agree and partly will disagree. For Gandhi, means is as equally important as the end, but Gandhi also made several exceptions for the use of violence. That's the different time. If a time someone asks question, I will elaborate on these things. Then he goes on the next section, whose means are more effective. So he's saying now we understand that the Gandhi, I'm adding Gandhi, but Ambedkar says Buddha and Marx agree that we need to remove the misery, exploitation, sorrow from the society, but they disagree with means, what means they should use. So what he also proposed, that in which means is more effective than other one. So he said actually violence method of means is short-lived. It cannot bring fundamental change for the long period of time. For short period it may be effective, but for the long period of time the violence and dictatorship is not a right method to use violence. So he clearly, that's why he said that we need to accept either non-violence method, democratic methods, or sometimes use creative force. But he is Ambedkar himself, and Buddha was also, according to him, was against using the violence, and he believed that the violence is not a very effective means to remove sorrow and exploitation from the society. So now he also take to, I think it's Gandhi would also agree on the same point with Buddha and Ambedkar, that violence is not a right way to bringing peace, order in the society. Now which kind of future society Buddha actually imagine and Marx actually imagine, that is also discussed by Ambedkar in his this essay. He says the communists themselves admit that the theory of state as a permanent dictatorship is a weakness of their political philosophy, and they take shelter under the play that state will ultimately wither away. State will go away, and there are two questions which they have no answer. One, when the state will go away, and second, what will take place of the state when it go away. So according to Ambedkar, the communists, the Marxists, they do not have answer to these two questions, satisfactory answer to this question. And when state will go away, what will succeed, they also don't know. He argued that if so, the building of the communist state is an useless effort. It cannot be sustained except by force, and if it is resulted in anarchy, when the force holding it together is withdrawn, what good is the communist state? So he's telling only the force can retain and sustain this state, and when the force, the violence will go away, state will go away, what will come? Only anarchy will come. So there is, he said, it is not worth pursuing this idea, he said. And he said here Buddha became important and relevant, because he said when state will go away, that religion will hold people, that the society together. And that's why he said Buddha's philosophy is much superior than Marx philosophy, and that's why he actually tilted toward the religion at the end of his life and converted to the religion. He definitely talked the all. He also said that what Marxists have a problem with the religion. They said that why Marxists did not believe that the religion can play such an important role. They said, according to Marx criticism, that religion make people otherworldly and make suffering and poverty as a virtue, so that they will be rewarded in the other world. So he said such criticism cannot be leveled against the Buddhism. Buddha did not talk about these things. Buddha was talking about here and now, suffering of the people, how to minimize people's suffering, and how to elevate poverty and exploitation from the society. So this is the way in Ambedkar's future, alternative future, religion has an important role than the state, to bring people to make a society, social, to maintain peace, harmony, and order in the society. And I will take 2 more minutes and I will finish it. That in Annihilation of Caste, actually, Ambedkar talked about his ideal society, and he said his ideal society is based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. I think I have already taken much time. I will only elaborate about the equality part. He said there should not be any objection to fraternity, just equality and liberty. But I think what is worth pursuing and understanding is that he made very clear that about what he mean by the equality. He said a man's power is dependent upon three things: one, physical heredity; second, social inheritance, education, scientific knowledge, what he gained from his family, and his family and in his environment; and third, on his or her own effort. And he said in all these three respects, men are undoubtedly unequal. But question is, shall we treat them unequal because they are unequal? Or this is a question which the opponent of equality must answer. He said, yes, though they are unequal in these two parts, he said it is that it is difficult, especially with respect to the first and 2 point, that to categorize the people. That is why, therefore, the rough and ready rule is that we should treat all men alike. And because not they are alike, because there is because the classification is impossible. So I believe Marx's idea was more utopian. Even Gandhi's idea of Ram Raj and Gram Swaraj was more utopian. But Ambedkar was talking about Ambedkar has a plan. Ambedkar has a vision and plan for the concrete future of the planet. With this word, I stop here, and thanks for the opportunity. For this opportunity for sharing my thoughts. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts.
So thank you, Professor Pogle. Now I request Randhir to kindly coordinate the discussion. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nishan. It was really very enriching and very inviting presentation. And I would like to ask our respected participant to share some of their reflections. I invite Miniti ji, and then I will give you some questions from our Facebook page also. Yes, Miniti ji, please ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. Both the speakers, actually, I mean, both the discussions on otherwise as Professor Nishikant Kolges were very enriching, I must say. But from that, I just reflected a few things a little bit. Just I'm not a scholar on this and anything, so just to share my own thoughts. So Anantabhai was telling when we are meditating on the Ambedkar's idea, I feel when we have to meditate on somebody's idea, we have to possess not everything like him, some qualities what he had, like the efficiency, honesty, and the power to have the do the revolution and long visionary attitude in non-violent way and ambitious thoughts. I mean, if you really say how many of us we know about Article 32, which is the heart and soul of the Indian Constitution, those things we have to embody first. The second thing is that when Anandbhai was telling anti-Brahminical, I have one doubt there. Whether it has to be anti-Brahminical or anti-casteism. Like, till now also in caste hierarchy, we see the so-called lower caste status people are always humiliated. Not only the Brahmins, only the higher caste, little bit higher, so-called higher caste people dominate the other one who is lower than them. That is one thing. So there just I want to share two things, the two aspects of Ambedkar's notion of freedom. Like Vanatrai also talked about Chaturvarna. So for Ambedkar, the freedom meant the freedom from Chaturvarna. That is the Varnashrama and propounded in the Hindu treatise and the organization of the personal and social life of an individual. Where I was talking about that Brahminical, anti-Brahminical, that also found that Ambedkar noticed that not actually the people behave. They don't want to, he was against the Shastra and Vedas because he recognized that the Hindus observe caste not because they see them as a down caste or something. That is just because they're religious. That they're inhuman and they're wrong-headed, not because they're deeply religious. So still now also we find those things into our society, into our caste system. So that is one thing. The freedom means one thing he said that is like what was all of us know, what was propounded by Manu, that denies the equality and the individual freedom. It is only based on the compulsory and arbitrary principle of graded inequality, as Professor Nishikant Pole was telling, that changing the moral value, but not in a forceful way. I mean, how we can do that? If you, in my knowledge, all the religions, that kindness, compassion, all these things are there. But when it comes to practicing those things, it is rarely it is being practiced. So, I mean, what are the ways to change those moral values, but not in a forceful or violent way? That is one thing. Then. One more thing also I want to say, like a revolutionary, Ambedkar as far back as 1936 argued that you must not forget that if you wish to bring about a breach in the system, then you have to get into the system, then you have to get into apply the dynamite of the Vedas and Shastras, which deny any part to reason, to the Vedas and Shastras, which deny the part to mortality. You must destroy the religion. But whether is it really possible to, without religion, is it to sustain? Like everybody cannot be atheist. And so these are some confusing thoughts actually I have. And so thank you. So this is what I just wanted to say. Thank you. And these two questions, one for Anantavai and one for Professor Nishikant Pole.
Do I need to reply to this question, Ranvi?
We have two more questions. One is one question is on our Facebook. He's asking about what are the contestation between Ambedkar and Marxist framework in terms of social empowerment. And second, he's asking about what is his idea of Buddhism, because Buddhism itself has a diversity in terms of thinking, in terms of practices. So he's trying to ask Rahul what Ambedkar idea of Buddhism. Thank you. These are the two sentences.
Okay. So yes.
Now one request, Professor Kogle, I have some battery problem because I am on the road. So in case my battery dies, so let me share
please.
some thought to Minati very quickly. So thank you, Minati. Now about freedom. Now Ambedkar has a notion of both social freedom as well as freedom to be, like freedom of each one of us, not to be pigeonholed into a very limiting time. This is one. Secondly, about religion. Yes, Ambedkar says that in order that we can realize the equality entailed in these religions, then we would have to destroy it, root and branch. Now, it may not be feasible, but that destruction of religion, this kind of destruction does not mean it is atheism, because it is really destroying those kind of structures which have occluded, which have put darkness to the essential spirit of religion. Now, whether we can do it or not, that is a challenge for each one of us. But Ambedkar is bringing us to this challenge. Unless we think in terms of radical rethinking, restructuring, including destruction of existing structures of religion, then equality is not possible. So thank you.
Okay. So I would also like to add one point that what my reading suggests, Ambedkar did not say that we need to destroy the religion. He said we need to destroy the shastras that actually sanction such practices, and people practice because they believe in such shastras. So definitely he was calling for the destruction of such shastras, such books, holy books that actually preach and practice such inhuman practices. Even though in that for destroying the shastras also, he was not against. He was not in favor of destroying the all shastras, because he himself wrote Buddha and his dharma as a one treatise, which will be useful for the now Buddhas now who converted with him. And actually, this brings me to the question, another one's question, that what was Ambedkar's Buddhism? Yeah, Ambedkar Buddhism actually was radically different from the earlier. There are some similarity and continuity. Buddhism, like any other religion, is also a very like Hinduism, I will say, not about I don't know about the Christianity and Islam, but it's a very alive religion, and there are continuous changes and changes, alteration. Some thoughts were given up, new one adopted. So there is also discussion about how Ambedkar's Buddhism is actually a Buddhism, but he also actually rejected that idea that Buddha saw the sights of dead people suffering and then he left home. He come up with the different ideas. He also interpreted the individual suffering as a social suffering. So definitely Ambedkar Buddhism was actually was more in many ways different than similar to the earlier practicing Buddhism.
Can I just ask one more thing? Randir, can I ask? Hello, yeah, this, just I was wondering one thing. I mean, I don't have knowledge about it. Like before this Ambedkar opposed this Manusmriti, it was written, of course, it's completely wrong thing. Few maybe in that century, people they had a new idea. But did anybody before also, I mean, read and opposed to the ideas of Manusmriti before Ambedkar? I just curious to know that.
My best of my knowledge is that actually to burning Manusmriti was not originally Ambedkar's idea. It was one of his Brahmin co-worker who suggested during the Mahad Satyagraha that as a sign of our disagreement, he to burn the Manusmriti. I also want to add, later when he read more about it, and actually he did not blame Manu for the practice of untouchability, because he said that according to his reading, untouchability was emerged much before actually the Manusmriti was written. So that is also actually he was very courageous person even to change his position when he find the fact are contradictory to his beliefs. So later actually he wrote that the Manusmriti Manu cannot be held fully responsible for the practice of untouchability, because it emerged much before the Manusmriti was written. Sorry, I did not answer you to your question, but
oh, that's not only, I just wanted to know, it has been so long in the humankind, like, that how people were taking that, slipping down all these tortures. So that was just, I was curious to know about it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nishikant. It was really very enriching and inviting presentation. And on behalf of Vishwanath Center for Asian Philosophy, I invite Mintiji to offer a vote of thanks.
You have to say some few lines, no? Some closing lines also, please. You can. Then I'll offer the vote of thanks.
I cannot speak in anything in front of Nishikant because he's a deep scholar, and very few scholars, they do not study with ideological sense, with dogmatic sense, and that is I find in the work of Dr. Nishikant, and he because of his rigorous understanding, because whenever a kind of question between Gandhi and Ambedkar comes into my scene, and whenever a student offers some difficult question, I just give and I refer Dr. Nishikant's books, and I always get a kind of good response from a student, because the kind of writing which Nishikant is doing is very, very important. And yes, very, very important, because it is not correct to say that any thinker is ultimate in that sense. Whatever he speaks is right all the time. Thought has some impact of time also, some situation also. But for a marginalized community, Ambedkar's quest of empowerment is very, very important. And that is why, yesterday I was talking to Barbara Harris, and she was just sharing a kind of a story that how Ambedkar is celebrated in America, particularly Columbia University. It is more than that of Gandhi. So I'm not comparing, but yes, again, with the empowerment of subaltern voice,